I mean, I appreciate all the work on that. 90% of these gas leaks are so minor that they don't even register.
The joint public hearing of the Salem City Council was held in the council chamber on Wednesday, November 15th at 6:30 PM for the purpose of discussing amending an ordinance relative to the following zoning. Ordinances relative to the following zoning, and I'll read them in a second. Notice of the hearing was posted on October 25th, 2017 at 11:12 a.m. And advertised in the Salem News on November 1st and November 8th, 2017. We've got 5 matters before us this evening. We're going to get through as many as we can. The first one is adding a new section 3.2.8, accessory living areas. The second is adding a new section within section 8, entrance corridor overlay district, requiring the design review board recommendations. Then we've got new 3 items, new uses and distribution of marijuana not medically prescribed. New uses, special permit, section 3.0, new definitions to section 10.0, and new section 6.10, special regulations. We've got a couple counselors on their way. We've got one counselor who's on vacation, and other than that, everybody from the council is in attendance. From the administration, we have the city solicitor, Beth Renard, and Amanda Chincola, from the planning department. And Mr. Chair, if you'll introduce your folks.
Well, I'm sure my board members can introduce themselves. Ben Anderson, Chair.
Helen Sides.
Gil Reset.
Kurt Reader.
Dale Yale.
Thank you. So the first item we have is amending zoning by adding a new section 3.2.8, accessory living areas. And this particular item was in economic development, and I think the best thing to do at this point, maybe, Councilor Dibble, if you can kind of introduce this, since it was in your committee.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. And then if there are any questions, we'll get to the questions.
This is an issue that came to us from Friends of the Council on Aging, requesting in-law apartments, and whereas not the majority, but a heck of a whole lot of the whole North Shore already allows it, Salem does not. It's prohibited. We tried to find a way to create these these in-law apartments so that a senior or somebody else could move into the in-law, or vice versa, a caretaker family could live in that portion while they took care of their loved one living in the other part of the house itself. We tried to create it in a way that did not change the appearance of single-family houses. We looked at only single-family houses. We had 2 public meetings on this. They were separated by 2 or 3 months. And during that 2 or 3 months, we made many changes to the ordinance. And we came up with a product that we thought that was pretty good, that protected Salem, but also allowed the in-laws and family members to live together. I'd like to turn this over to our city solicitor, who did a phenomenal job in crafting this, a lot of research. And I'd like her to just simply touch upon the highlights of the ordinance, if you would.
So the proposed ordinance was modeled after other ordinances that you find in Peabody, Danvers, and Topsfield. And it would allow in an R1 or a non-conforming home, single-family home in that district, to by special permit by the ZBA, to create an 800 square foot maximum, 2-bedroom maximum unit within a single family home. And the restrictions also would not allow any new entrants to change the character of the single family home. So an entrance would need to be to the side or to the rear. There would still need to be a connection between the primary unit and this other dwelling unit. It's limited to either a caregiver or a family member. That's spelled out pretty clearly in the ordinance. And it allows for a, if there is an illegal accessory unit right now, it allows the year and the CPA to put plans together, come before the board, and get the special permit. There is a requirement that they be inspected annually by the building inspector. There's a fee associated with that, so that the building inspector can make sure that they are still in compliance. Say a family member passes away, the building inspector can still maintain that unit so long as they have an annual inspector. No one moves into that unit that doesn't qualify, and they haven't amended their special permit. Special permits will have to be recorded at the registry of deeds, and annual inspections. So those are sort of the highlights of the ordinance.
Go ahead, Councilor
Thank
Dibble.
you, Solicitor. I think what you just heard, we put a lot of attention, we kind of copied the better parts of other municipalities' ordinances and crafted a little bit more wording in it, and we kind of expanded it to be extended family members. So in-laws and step parents and stepchildren and on and on. But it's really intended to be family members and not at all to be a second apartment and to double the capacity of any of our single families. We really tried to protect our single-family neighborhoods, but make a way that these in-laws can, I call them in-laws, family members can take care of other family members and still have some reasonable privacy within their own small unit within their house. So 2-bedroom maximum, most will become, I think, 1-bedroom because the total square footage is pretty small.
Do Councilor Fury?
Madam President, this is long overdue for the city of Salem. It's going to encourage families to stay in Salem, older people to stay in Salem, professionals to stay in Salem. I had the rare opportunity, the rich opportunity to live in 2 in-law apartments, owner-occupied, raising my 5 kids, my 5 adopted children, and I became part of their family, which was just beautiful for them growing up, because their family situation was so challenging and difficult, and to go into an owner-occupied house and be part of that family was just amazing. The kids won, I won, they won in the neighborhood. So it's long, long overdue throughout the city of Salem. It's going to be a rich opportunity for so many people to stay in Salem. So many people can't stay in Salem. They move to, say, Newburyport, Newbury, different other towns and cities, and relocate away from their families. This is a way of keeping the family in. Long overdue. I was there at several of the meetings. And outstanding job, Councilor Dibble. Outstanding. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Bless you.
Thank you.
Kurt?
I heard something verbally which I've not entirely seen in the written word. Could someone please clarify if this 800 square feet is limited to within the existing architecture or the existing structure, or if it could be partially within the dwelling lot? Because there seems to be a turn of phrase that's not entirely clear on that.
The intent was to be within the existing dwelling structure.
Within the building envelope of the existing structure, even though it allows for the modification of the rear and the side elevations for a new entry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If the wording needs to be tightened up, in your opinion, let's tighten it up.
Anyone else? Okay, as far as comments from the public, we'll start on this side and we'll go around. And first, does anybody want to speak in favor? John? Name and address, please, for the record. And I might say that I have to give credit to, or we have to give credit to John Russell, because he was a major player in putting this ordinance together. Thank you, John.
Thank you. John Russell, 16 Memorial Drive. I'm here to speak in support of the accessory living ordinance. Also in support is the Friends of the Council on Aging, the Board of Directors of the Council on Aging, and the Director of the Council on Aging, the new Director. I have a little communication from the Director, and if I may read it in. And it's the Salem Council on Aging Board staff continue to advocate for the accessory living area special permit to maximize opportunity for elders and people living with disabilities to remain as independent as possible with the support of caregivers, to preserve family living and access the support and maintain the dignity of our seniors as they age in place. Again, this is long overdue. We talk about Salem being an age-friendly community. It's hard to be age-friendly if we can't take care of our senior population, our parents, our grandparents, our children. This gives us the opportunity to have somebody in our house, in our homes, that gives them the independence as well as the dignity to have their own kitchens, to be able to cook their own meals and not to be dependent on the other family members. As we get older, we don't want to be a burden, and this is what happens, is we force people to be a burden because we can't let them fend for themselves. You know, it's important that they get to keep their houses and live in their houses. The caregiver may live in a small portion of the house so that they can maintain their house. It's also great for some of the children so that they can live in these apartments to save some money to afford to buy their own houses in the communities that they grew up in. I can't stress enough how important it is to give the independence and the dignity to the senior population. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's approximately a 2-year or better waiting list for senior housing in Salem. This, in a small part, will help to alleviate that, just to give more housing to the senior population. And there is another letter here from Linda Koffel. She's the chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Council on Aging. And I'll leave the letter, but I just want to read the last paragraph. The Board of the Council on Aging, as do all of you, take serious its responsibility of speaking and advocating for the approximately 8,000 senior citizens in our community. The successful passage of this ordinance will go a long way in protecting and supporting the older citizens. On behalf of the Board, thank you for being as concerned as we are for the comfort and security of our senior citizens. I really hope everybody gives full consideration to this. It's really important and really overdue. Thank you very much.
And John, can we get copies of those for the clerk, and she'll put them
Yes.
into the record? Thank you. Councilor Girai.
Thank you, Madam President. Listening to Mr. Russell speak, just a question or a clarification. I'm not sure if Councilor Dibble or if the city solicitor can answer this. So why are we limiting the space to 800 square feet? Why? Because I think when Mr. Russell was speaking, especially about dignity of older people, and I would hate the idea of saying to my parents, yeah, you can come live in my basement, but you can only have 800 square feet of it. You know? So I don't know what was the rationale for limiting it?
In looking at other cities and towns and what they allow for, 800 feet is a pretty sizable space, larger than what a lot of other cities and towns allow for a in-law apartment. It's not a whole apartment, but it's a sizable space. If you do the math on, you know, a couple of rooms, you're well under 800 square feet.
Councilor Terrio?
Thank you, Madam President, and sorry I'm late, I was at a meeting at the police station. The 800 square foot rationale, that's a fairly decent size for even a 2-bedroom apartment in many cases. I know because among other things, the apartment I lived in before moving to Salem was an 800 square foot 2-bedroom apartment that handled handled 3 people very nicely, so it's a pretty good size.
Okay, moving on. We'll come on to this side of the room. Anybody want to speak in favor of this? No? Okay, we'll start back over here. Anyone want to speak opposed? Sai?
Hi, Josiah Fisk, 358 Essex Street. I just have a question. What happens when does this expire? And can it pass from one family member to another without expiring? But if the person moves away or passes on or whatever, if the use disappears, essentially, what happens then?
Let our city solicitor answer it.
Okay.
So the use can transfer so long as, so if someone passes away, as long as they have an annual inspection and no one else has moved in there without modification, it would have to be a new permit, a special permit, if there's a new situation. So it can be maintained so long as it stays vacant until a new special permit is applied for that particular situation.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the concern behind this is simply, are we creating a situation where then people are going to have this place and they're going to want to look for some way to continue it, or rented out illegally, which I understand the annual inspection is meant to deal with. But I don't know if people will be able to come in later and say that it's a hardship, because they would now have to undo this in order to sell their house or something. It's a single house or something like that. That really was all that was behind the question.
Yeah. I believe there's language in here, right? Is in terms of rental,
Right, so
you can
it's,
exchange money, but not,
there can be compensation paid, you know, so mother or father can help with the expenses. But there is, if the property is sold, then it extinguishes unless the new property owner comes in and gets new special notice.
okay. Meg?
My name is Meg Tui. I live at 122 Federal Street, and I am a senior. I have a question through you, Madam Chair. You mentioned, Beth, in your remarks that this applies to an R1 or a non-conforming single family, and that is an extraordinary concern to me. It's okay to me for the people who live in R1 if this is what they want. But for those of us who live in R2 or more dense neighborhoods, this will be a disaster.
So a second apartment would be allowed by right in R2. So this is like the unique situation where you might have a single family home in a B5 or B1 or wherever it might be.
But not in an R2.
You could already have the second unit.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the help, the work that has gone into this, but I do share Si's concern that this is a slippery slope, where we're creating additional living units that will be important for a while, and then what happens? And I think there will be pressure on this body to create additional density in the city, and I value our quality of life. So thank you.
Anyone else care to speak opposed? On this side? No? No.
So in looking at point 3.4, the first sentence, it says, one occupant of the accessory living area shall be a family member with one owner of the main dwelling, unless the occupant shall provide personal care to a family member of at least one owner of the main dwelling or to an occupant of the family accessory living area. I can't really figure out what that sentence means. I'm just trying to get at exactly what the restriction is for who can live in one of these units and who can't. And I don't know if there's a typo in here somewhere. It seems like circular to me, so if someone can clarify what that is.
I think the intent of that language, it might need to be clarified, was that if, say, mom and dad owned a residence, but mom didn't want to live in the primary residence, she could move in her own home to the smaller accessory unit, and her daughter.
So essentially, it's interchangeable who lives where, but they both have to have that familial relationship.
Correct.
Okay, so just a quick comment on that. So the state actually has a model bylaw on creating accessory dwelling units, and it gets at this issue that we're talking about here, right? Point 1, provide older homeowners with a means of obtaining rental income, companionship, security, and services, thereby enabling them to stay more comfortably at homes and in neighborhoods that they might otherwise be forced to leave. I think this deals with that, but it goes on to talk about other ways that this is useful to help solve problems that we are experiencing in the city, and it does not specifically limit this to family members. So it says, 2, add moderately priced rental units to the housing stock to meet the needs of smaller households and make housing units available to moderate income households who might otherwise have a difficulty finding housing. 3, develop housing units in single family neighborhoods that are appropriate for households at a variety of stages in their life cycle. 4, provide housing units for persons with disabilities. 5, protect stability, property values, and the residential character of a neighborhood. So I guess my concern here is, and I understand how we're not trying to turn single-family neighborhoods into multifamily housing, but if an elder person or a young person right out of college, say, in the community needs to live in housing like this, what should it matter whether, say I create one of these in my backyard, if that person is my mother or somebody else's mother from the neighborhood, what does it matter who takes that unit? You could be doing a lot more with this ordinance by making it broader and not just applying to family members. And I think there's some wordsmithing that would have to go into that to make sure that it's not, again, a slippery slope to just creating multifamily housing in the neighborhoods. But we hear complaints all the time that, people can't afford to stay in their neighborhoods, both in terms of young people who have grown up here and in terms of older people who can't manage full houses on their own. And so by restricting it just to the familial relationship, there might be somebody down the street from me who has to leave their house, who's older, who isn't, related to me on a family relationship, but their house may not have the ability to construct one of these, and there might be space for it in my house. So why just limit it to that property where the person has that familiar relationship? It seems unnecessarily restrictive to me.
I think if we,
Yeah.
I think if we take it that one more step beyond the family members, then we open up the can of worms and we open the door totally so it truly becomes a two-family. That's not the intent of what we try to do here. We try to have it family members helping other family members and extended family members. We really broaden the range of that family. It doesn't include friends down the street or some stranger or somebody else who might be renting.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, in my opinion, I think that, there's no reason why, it'd be great if you can help your mother. If you couldn't help your mother, why couldn't I help your mother? That's basically what I'm saying, if I'm your neighbor.
Counselor Ryan.
I think that addresses that when it says, unless the occupant shall provide personal care to a family member, at least.
Of at least
One
one
of the
owner,
owners.
well. So I think it still restricts it within the family. That's what I was trying to clarify.
Madam President,
No, but
I brought up that very same point when we had the committee meetings on this, and I agree with you, but it was the committee's intent not to allow that specifically, only allow that when it's maybe a nurse or a nanny or some relationship like that.
Yeah, that's understood, but yeah, I'm saying that, in my opinion, it's unduly restrictive, and I think we could be doing a lot more with it, and it's also, my opinion seems to be consistent with the model guidelines that the state provides.
Madam President?
Counselor Sargent.
You can still help someone in that situation, they just wouldn't have to be able to have an accessory apartment. If you had a single person that wanted to help somebody's mother down the street, they can rent them a bedroom in their house by,
Sure.
You can have so many unrelated people. The worry is to move too fast, and if we have a 800 square foot, 2-bedroom apartment, technically, if you did that, you could have two couples living in one in each bedroom with 4 cars. If they were working and they both had cars. And a lot of the worry, not all the one-family neighborhoods have a lot of parking. Right. Some of them are on 5,000 square foot lots. So it's just trying to be cautious and not have a one-family house really be a two-family house.
And I completely understand that concern. My thought is just that there could be language drafted elsewhere in the ordinance to sort of restrict that issue. It could be, you could limit the number of cars. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure how it would work, but I'm sure we could figure something out. To limit the number of cars that could be registered to an accessory dwelling unit, something like that.
Counselor Sargent.
Plus also, 800 square feet is a pretty good sized place. I have a 5-room, pretty large 5-room, 2-bedroom, living room, dining room, pantry, hallways. It's 900 square feet. So that's an apartment. It's not an accessory apartment. 800 square feet is big, if not bigger than probably half the apartments in Salem. So they're being pretty generous to start out. Thank you.
Any other? Correct.
Not to be argumentative with Noah, you did say if somebody wanted to do something in their backyard, I feel compelled to once again clarify that it's within the existing building.
Helen?
If I may,
Oh, sorry.
Unless it
Sure.
isn't.
when I was working on this, I did not draft it so that it would prohibit perhaps a variance or something to add maybe a small addition to the back. If that is the intent, I think that needs to be clear, are you correct?
It absolutely
There
does.
was nothing, that was not, when I was sort of working with the other models, I envisioned that there may be a situation where there might be an addition to the rear, for example. So I did not put it in here to prohibit that.
And most accessory dwelling ordinances everywhere else have that ability, so I think it's
I
an
understand.
important one to
That's why
clear
it's
up.
nebulous to me.
Yeah.
There's some language where it said it has to be in keeping with
It
the,
has to keep the character of the single family.
yeah.
That doesn't mean you couldn't have something to the rear.
Where was that language? Because there was some other language.
So 3.6, modifications of the exterior shall be completed in a manner that maintains the appearance of the dwelling as a single family.
There's a lot of property within that, or there's a lot of interpretation in that one sentence.
Helen?
I would expect that if an addition is proposed to accommodate this use, that if it's permitted by zoning, then it should be allowed, because it can be converted in the future if the need is no longer necessary. So I don't think that you can restrict it to being only within the existing dwelling. I think that's more than you can expect. The other issue is that 800 square feet may seem large, but if you're trying to accommodate somebody with accessibility issues, then it's not necessarily that big. If all doorways need to be a certain size and bathrooms need to be a certain size, so I think the square footage is less of a concern, and that is a standard quantity of square footage in this, say in Beverly and other towns. So, I would think that with this expectation that annually they're being inspected, houses being used, again, that's what other towns are doing, that that kind of square footage, if you dismantle the kitchen space and it becomes some other use, they're within their right to expand their house.
Counselor McCarthy, Counselor Famico.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess through you to the city solicitor, I could see that if someone wanted to reconfigure their home and they had, in order to make it work, they wanted to add on to the home. But I guess my concern or question would be, if they're gonna do that, would it have to be in such, would the ad have to be such that they wouldn't need to seek a variance in order to do it? I mean, obviously you need a special permit for this use to put in this in-law or whatever you want to refer to it, but if someone's looking to add to their home to accommodate an in-law to actually increase, then should it be that whatever addition or whatever, however they enhance their home, as long as they don't have to, so as long as they don't have to go for, a variance with regard to lot coverage, so it's on a big enough lot, side, rear setbacks, so it fits with, as long as it fits without having to, it's one thing when you're asking, and I respect the fact that, you're looking for an extended family, and I get that, and, but when you're also, then you're asking your neighbors, said, okay, I want to extend my house to accommodate my mother or my father or whatever it is, but then you're also asking them, well, in order to do that, I got to put 800 feet on the back of my house, and so now my home is going to be extended, now it's going to be in your backyard, or it's going to be in your side yard. So, if you can do it within the footprint, that's great. But if you need to add to it, then I somehow, I don't know how the language could be. It would be in such a way that, you're not going to, extend, if you're in a non-conforming home, if you're in a single-family house that's, you're non-conforming and your side setback is such that maybe you should be putting it on the other side, but your house is already non-conforming, so if it's on a small lot, then you have to do whatever you're trying to do within the footprint of your home. But if you have a lot that's big enough that it would allow you to do that, I don't think that should be as big of an issue, because it may be, all right, maybe you're gonna put 1,200 square feet on the back of your house, but you're only gonna have 800, but it conform, but now you're gonna make the main dwelling's kitchen a little bigger, reconfigure that at the same time and incorporate everything into it. You're enhancing your home, you're entitled to do that, but as long as you're doing that and you're not seeking a variance in order to, I think that would be fine. But if if you have a single-family home and you want to put someone in the basement or put somebody in the attic, or wherever it's going to be, or wherever the section of the house is going to be, that's fine. But if you're looking to add to your home in order to incorporate that, then I don't think we should be allowing that special permit if we're also, at the same time as we're seeking a special permit, we're also seeking numerous variances in order to squeeze that 800 square feet into a lot. I don't think that works. That doesn't work for me. A lot of this works for me, but that wouldn't work for me.
Councilor Famico.
Thank you, Madam Chair President. I have a few things, but through you to the city solicitor. During our committee meeting, I had raised having definitions of accessory living unit or accessory living areas. Do we currently have that definition?
It's on page 5.
In section 2, the last page. An accessory living area is a housekeeping unit with adult sleeping, cooking, and sanitary facilities located within a single-family dwelling that is subordinate in size to the principal unit, separated from it in a manner that maintains the appearance of the building as a single-family dwelling, and allowed by special permit pursuant to section 2.28.
A follow-up to that, on page 2, 2.1, it says a single-family detached dwelling. So that doesn't correspond there? On page 2, 2.1, it says record title ownership interest of a single-family detached dwelling.
So it would be a townhouse.
But in the definition, it doesn't correspond. And then I'm also wondering, with some of ours, it could be a townhouse, but it's actually larger to have than some homes. And then also, what is the definition of personal care? Is there a legal definition of family member? Because some people call other people aunt and uncle and cousin, that there's no real blood or real relationship, I guess, because that doesn't matter. And also was wondering, and I don't have my zoning book, if there's a definition of detached dwelling.
I believe there is, but I'll double check.
So for that specifically though, if we don't know what personal care is, that could pretty much be anything. And then my second point on this, on page 4, this talks about the annual inspection and says it'd be $75. We had a committee meeting last night talking about certificate of fitness, that annual inspection for an apartment that's larger than, or could be larger than this, it depends, would be $50. So we have two different prices for the same task that's happening. And those are two things going forward. And then the final thing, just for people's reference, if you go to masshousingregulations.com, there are examples of accessory unit, living areas, whatever you want to call it by the town, across all over the place. So there's about 100 and some odd plus pages if anyone's interested. But for this, just the definitions for it, I think there is a need, but to go into what the planning board member said earlier too, I know some cities, and I don't know if either the planning department or the solicitor could speak to this, that if you start opening it up, it could, some cities are actually using these accessory units or trying to count it towards the affordable housing percentage, and I would not want to see that happening, especially if you start having a lot of the units, because then you're prohibiting other growth in other areas for larger units as well. Thank you.
Anyone else from the current?
It may be already covered by the existing zoning code or building code, but I would like to see some sort of prohibition on additional curb cuts into the property so that we don't end up with 2 or 3 additional curb cuts. It's probably a non-issue, but it's worth daylighting for consideration.
Okay, I think there are other folks who want to speak, so we'll start from this side again, and Tim, and then Gary.
Thanks, Tim Jenkins, 18 Broad Street. I looked at Councilor Famico's suggestion as well earlier today on mass housing, and it actually does have a great deal of ordinances, and they're approaching this issue in a number of different ways. It looks like our approach is to assist families handle, aging parents or somebody with a disability. That appears to be the route that we were taking here. But a lot of them that did take that route have a lot more detail, and I don't know if that's better or not. But there are a lot of issues that come in, whether it's parking, the expansion of the unit, impact on neighbors, increase in the lot coverage beyond what's allowed. Anyway, Peabody, actually, I think you mentioned Peabody and Danvers and Topsfield. Peabody's is a lot more detailed, and it seems to have addressed a lot of the issues that came up. So I'd suggest maybe taking a little more time to go in and find out what people's issues are, and then maybe look to see if Peabody's is more akin to what we're looking for. Topsfield is different. Wakesfield is like incredibly tough. You have to tear it out. You have to prove it. You have to have affidavits sworn. It's quite, there's a lot of variation. So there may be a model, but there are a lot of variations. And it seems to me that we ought to take the time to go through it in detail to avoid unintended consequences, which unfortunately do occur. So thanks.
Thank you. Gary?
So if half of you know me, you know that for the last 8 years I've been taking care of seniors. Last night was one of our dinners at the House of Seven Gables.
Gary?
I've been doing it for 8 years.
Name and address for the record, please.
Gary Gill, Salem, Massachusetts, Highland Ave. So I've been doing this dinner program for seniors at the House of Seven Gables for the last 8 years. I got an award for that when I started it 7 years ago in Washington, D.C. The biggest topic that we have is housing, and handicap housing for family members in particular. I think it's a great idea. You should run with it. It should be 3 things. One would be the resale value of the unit itself. Are those people going to be able to reap from the benefits of a 4-bedroom house if it's a 2-bedroom house and they add another $800 onto it? Are they going to reap from that benefit? Probably yes. So you're going to have to take that into consideration. The other half of it is that I haven't heard anybody talk about, except maybe one person, in regards to handicap accessibility. When you go to that area of taking care of I was a caregiver, so I know all the situations in regards to taking care of somebody at an end-of-life program. You have to have everything big enough, entrances, showers, flooring, countertops, all of that. So therefore, later on, they can't rent that unit out, as Heather's talking about, for bigger money and reap from the benefits on that half. So that's the second thing. The other thing, of course, is the hot topic in Salem right now, parking. So you have to take that into consideration too. So that's all I have to say, but please take that whole idea, run with it, but be very careful about the outcome at a later date in regards to adding on a whole 800 to an existing house or in the backyard. I don't think that that's the way they really had this idea going. It's whatever is space in a house that they can adapt for a family member. When I was living in Marblehead, I worked for a very affluent family, and they did that with their mother instead of putting her into assisted living. She was in that situation in her home for 2 years before she passed away. So the grandkids and everybody got to spend time and quality time with her, and there was a caregiver in the unit as well, in the house. So they gave the unit to the mother. The husband and wife stayed in the house in their own bedroom, but let the caregiver have one of the other 2 bedrooms that were in the house. So they all, as you said, Tom, everybody reaped from the benefits. There were holidays spent, there was relationships built, and there were memories. So that's all I have to say.
Did I see someone from the board? No, I thought I saw. Anybody else from the public have any comments? No? Anyone from the council have any comments? Councilor Dibble.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To Mr. Gill's comments there, I think the Ward 1 councilor nailed it when he talked about variances and special permits not being allowed. So if the property is big enough, you're not going to really affect your neighbors, then you can add on to your house. but most of the houses in Salem are not big enough. So back to Mr. Gill's comments, it would have to be done inside the structure, which was the original intent, but I'm okay if the property is big enough, as the Ward 1 counselor talked about. If you want to put an addition onto your house where you're not really going to be affecting your neighbors, and you're doing it within existing zoning laws, I'd like to see the wording go in here that variances and special permits are not allowed to create this accessory apartment. Accessory living area, not apartment, sorry.
Counselor Terrio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'll address a couple of these things that came up in the course of the Ward 7 councilor's work in developing this. You know, and there were a lot of people who participated in the process, but the intent was, for starters, I know we had comments from the public about other towns. We worked from the regulations in a number of additional communities in the area in the process of trying to develop applicable standards for Salem to do this. So we've incorporated things that are done in Peabody, things that are done in Wakefield and Topsfield, in other communities within this region. We use that as a starting point for figuring out what would be appropriate for Salem itself. The special permit process for this has been designed with the idea of covering all the scenarios and specifying what will the family members be using this, what will the relationship be, who will in fact be there, what are the plans for doing this, what provisions will be made for accessibility, what outside entrance will there be. That's all provided for as part of the special permit issuing process, and should that information not be adequate to the Board of Appeals, then no special permit would be granted at that point. So, you know, this is very much designed, and you know, also Ms. Corretz had the point about, yes, we do have housing issues, and there probably are solutions that we could do that are more flexible than this particular one. This, you know, this ordinance is really crafted to try and address one really specific issue that's affecting people in Salem, but it is not the largest single part of our housing issues. We are trying to address the problems of people with family members with medical issues, senior parents, caregivers, and allowing those families to remain physically intact, or allowing them to have family members present for care. That's the real core of this, and to not force seniors out of their homes. So, you know, we're trying to address with this a particular small problem. We've done it in a great amount of detail, and I will commend the Ward 7 councilors' work in holding the meetings and getting all the input on this over 3 or 4 meetings altogether, I think, since we started this. We've gotten a lot of work done on this, and I think you know, I think he did a fabulous job at making this happen. So, you know, I want to recognize that, and I'll say, like, this has been designed, and in some cases this is probably narrower, if anything, than it could have been, but it was trying to address very specific points rather than, and not leave the door open for permanent units or, you know, de facto turning single families into multifamilies.
Any other comments, questions? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public
Counselor.
hearing.
Seconded?
Okay, Counselor Dibbles moved to close the public hearing, seconded by Counselor Gerard. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter carries. Somebody want to move? Counselor Terrio?
So I move that we refer this to the planning board for their recommendation.
Second? Second. Okay, Counselor Terrio moves that we move this to the planning board, seconded by Counselor Gerard. All those in favor? All those opposed? That matter carries. Okay, thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda, Counselor Famiko.
Thank you, Madam President. Prior to this starting, when I stepped out before, I made 15 additional copies for the items tonight. There's some over here, so the items discussed, share it with a neighbor, but that way you can actually read along. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. Okay. The next item on the agenda is amending zoning by adding a new section within Section 8 Entrance Corridor Overlay District requiring the Design Review Board recommendations. Who would like to introduce that? Amanda? Okay.
Thank you. Amanda Chincola, staff planner with the city. So the ordinance in front of you tonight came about from a recommendation from the planning board. And staff worked with the planning board to draft the ordinance in front of you. It's to enhance the board's review of a site plan review. And it's enhancing the site plan review by relying on the design review board's expertise of design for projects within the entrance corridor that meet a certain threshold. And so the entrance corridor overlay district, it focuses on the first 150 feet of design, or first 150 feet or the parcel boundary, whichever is less. And so if you walk through the ordinance under applicability, it's with the exception of the provisions set forth in 8.2.8. The goal here is that design review would cover the entire boundary, not just that first 150 feet. So what we're looking at is for projects along Highland Avenue, a lot of those buildings are pushed back well beyond 150 feet. So we want to make sure that any development along an entrance corridor is subject to design review. And what I mean by design review would be the design review board providing an advisory opinion to the planning board. The second section of this is except as set forth in 8.2.8. The entrance corridor overlay district requirements do not apply to a planned unit development. That's a different animal. But with this exception language, it means that a design review advisory opinion would still apply for PUDs in an entrance corridor. We want to make sure that if you have a PUD in an entrance corridor, it's still getting design review. And then 8.2.8 goes through the different thresholds for when design review would be required. The first one is projects 10,000 square feet or larger within an entrance corridor require an advisory opinion from the design review board before the planning board can make a decision. The second part is for new non-residential development from 2,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. So 2,000 square feet is the threshold for a site plan review. So if you need a site plan review, but you're under 10,000 square feet, the planning board would vote to determine whether the project requires design review. And that's a simple majority, so 5 of the 9 members vote. And then the third one is for residential dwelling units, for 6 new residential dwelling units or more. And again, that's already a site plan review threshold, so that means any site plan review that is 6 units or more within an entrance corridor would require design review from the design review board before the planning board can make a decision. So that's the ordinance in front of you, and I'm available for questions. Thanks.
Councilor Fumiko.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Amanda. So what about if we have a project and they're rebuilding and it's the same footprint? Would that be eligible for this?
No, only if it meets the threshold for a site plan review.
So if it's that threshold, but so for example, on Canal Street, when we've had before with some buildings that got redone, for example, a certain fast food company, that would not require?
No, it's new construction, so 2,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet of new construction, or 10,000 square feet or more of new construction is that automatic.
So if it's something that it's not new, but there's a substantial change, it wouldn't meet it either?
It's only if it meets that threshold of a site plan review.
Thank you.
Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Amanda, why do we limit it to 2,000 square feet? I'll use an example. The recently demolished Global gas station on Route 1A in Venice Square on Paradise. They demolished the existing store and the pay station, and they're building a Valvoline, almost self-service, where you drive your vehicle and stay in your vehicle, then drive out the other side when a mechanic will change the oil for you. But that building is so small that it did not require site plan review. I think it's 1,000 square foot for the whole building. But yet, we want to make sure that the entrance corridor is protected with the dumpsters and the landscaping and the signage and on, is what and I helped craft the original entrance corridor overlay back in 1986. So I'm familiar with that. Why don't we lower it down so that the entrance corridors are really protected for these non-residential properties?
Thank you, Councilor Dibble. So the site plan, the way this is written is that the design review board provides an advisory opinion to the planning board. So for the threshold to be lower than 2,000 square feet, you would also need to reduce the threshold of site plan review. If not, then the advisory opinion would go to, it wouldn't go to a body, a review board.
As I understand now, the future Valvoline oil change place, the old Global gas station, the only review that they were subject to was our building inspector, who kind of twisted their arm to have more landscaping and hide the dumpster and a few other things that they weren't going to fully do. And I think, I looked at the plans, I think they could have been better, but he did a very good job. I wish that the design review board had reviewed that, because that's our gateway. That's the first property coming from Boston up Route 1A. But yet, there was virtually no review at all by any of our experts.
Yeah.
I'd like to see this, Madam President, I'd like to see this reduced, or at least discussed in greater detail, of a reduction so that we, and I'm not talking residential properties, I'm talking the commercial business properties, that we don't get something quite funky that we just simply don't like, that is smaller than this 2,000 square foot threshold.
So again, to reduce that threshold, my understanding is you would need to go into site plan review and reduce the threshold for a site plan review as well. Or under the entrance corridor, where it's 2,000 square feet or more requires site plan review, that would have to be lowered for the design review board to be able to provide the advisory opinion to the planning board.
Then we lower it.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Fumiko, did you have something?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, does anybody else have any? Councilor Terrio.
Just, thank you, Madam Chair. Just one thought to tie to this, if you're, and this would address a little bit of the ward councilors, the Ward 7 councilors' thought here. If you, and I don't know what the language would be, but if you change the language to say structures that, non-resident structured premises that subject to site plan review and at 9,999 square feet or below, that might be, so if we someday did amend site plan review criteria for an entrance corridor to require it, say, at 1,000 square feet of building, then that would automatically sweep in this. I don't know exactly the language that would work there, but, if you did something like that without stating what that minimum number is and just said anything, any site facility, any non-residential structure premises that are subject to site plan review below at 9,999 square feet or below, if you put that language in there, that would then cover if that was ever reduced.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, so we'll entertain comments from the public. We'll start on this side once again. Anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this? We'll come around this side of the, oh, Meg.
Meg Toohey, 122 Federal Street. I am in favor of this, and I do support also Councilor Dibble's concern. I also have a question, and that is, why is Bridge Street, the section between North Street and Boston Street, not in the entrance overlay corridor? And I guess I refer that question through you, Madam President, to Amanda.
I cannot speak to the reasoning as to why it's not. I'm not familiar with that. I can speak to the Bridge Street, that section is within the North River Canal Corridor. And so that section gets design review through the North River Canal Corridor projects, if a project's subject to an NRCC special permit. But as to why it's not in that entrance corridor, I will have to get back to you.
One further comment then.
Sure.
I think, given the fact that that area has been now rezoned, I think this is one of the issues that we will want to be taking up with our new counselor, because now we have B4 in that area, so it's no longer solely NRCC. So that's part of the reason I raised that concern. And I don't know whether there are other important areas in the city that are not protected as overlay districts. So if there are, I would urge us to look at that. Thank you.
Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll speak to that really fast. A young intern in 1986 drew up the map that showed the entrance corridor overlays, and that person sitting in this chair was charged with drawing the lines from our abutting communities to the downtown. So it was like the bicycle spokes coming into the town, into the downtown. I made a mistake where I did not include Paradise, the section at, I did include Olive Loring, but the section of 1A I didn't include. And Councilor Lovely earlier this year asked that Jefferson Ave be added in its entirety, and I piggybacked on his idea to add that section of Paradise in Venice Square. Bridge Street was added at the same time 3 decades ago from Beverly Salem Bridge to the downtown, to, I believe, to Washington Street. I had to double check to see exactly where it ends, but I believe it's where the Rotary used to be, at the old train station. And I see no reason why Bridge Street in its entirety could not be part of the entrance corridor overlay. So I'm in agreement.
Anyone else? No? Tim?
Real quickly, Tim Jenkins, 18 Broad Street. I'm in support of it too, and I think your additional idea is great, and expanding it to Jefferson and then Bridge Street also makes sense, and it should really help with improved future development. A great move.
Anyone else over here wish to speak in favor? How about on this side of the room? Anybody in favor? Okay, we'll start around again. Anybody wish to speak opposed? Coming around, anybody opposed? No? Okay. Kurt?
Not opposed, but for just another topic that I'll be interested in discussing in planning board amongst ourselves is the focus that we've talked about tonight seems to be on the square footage of new architecture, new buildings. The example you gave of barely 1,000 square feet of a building, but in fact they've disrupted 9, 10, 20, 30,000 square feet of the site for impermeable paving. I'd like us to have a little bit more of a discussion about expanding the definition of footprint to go beyond that of a building.
Great.
Because it's a big impact, especially at the example you cited.
Anyone else? Any comments? Councilor Famico, you did your homework? You ready?
No, I just had a question, and I'm not an architect, but I'm wondering, so this would be between 2,000 and 9,999, but then it goes on for residential has to be 6 or more residential dwelling units. How many square feet is a typical apartment? Like if I were to look at some of the houses on Bridge Street that were just converted to condos, and I believe some of those have 6 units in it, would that be over 2,000 square feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Depends on the size.
Okay, so for that, then I know it aligns with the other, but if you're looking at 6 or more, especially on an entrance corridor, I think I'd like to see I would like to see those reviewed as well then, because it doesn't matter how many units, it's more of the building size. Because some people go for larger units or not, it shouldn't matter on the amount of units in the building for that. I was just trying to get some examples of that just now. And additionally, I'll agree with the thing about the landscaping and ripping things out and you're dealing with surfaces. And also just wanted some clarification with the 2,000 to 999 for the site plan review. Is that due to the site plan review is only for 10,000 feet or more, square feet or more?
Can you repeat the question?
So you had said that it was based on the site plan review. The site plan review, is that for 10,000 square feet or more, is that correct?
In the entrance corridor, it's for 2,000 square feet. The rest of the city is 10,000.
Great. Thank you for that.
All set?
Yeah, because my main thing was, it shouldn't matter how many units are in the building, the size is the size, and if you have something that's done and it's the same footprint, we should be putting more thought into that. Especially if people are coming in and we're spending all this money on redoing our entrance corridors, Boston Street next, that you have to make sure that the street surfaces also align with your, well, I guess your streetscape aligned with your buildings as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Counselor Dibble?
I move that the hearing be closed.
Have a second? Counselor Dibble moves that the hearing be closed, seconded by Counselor Ryan. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter carries. Counselor Dibble?
Yes, I further move that the matter be referred to the planning board for their recommendation.
You have a second?
Second.
Okay. On Counselor Dibble's motion, that this be referred to the planning board for their recommendation. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter carries. Okay. Now, the next three items are all pretty much interrelated, and the expectation is that we're gonna start this tonight, but we fully expect that we'll have to continue these particular items to a date certain, and my understanding is we've already been able to determine a date where we can continue these. I mean, it's 8:45. I'm gonna leave it up to you all if you want. Oh, is that only 7:45?
Yep.
Oh, well. All right. Then,
It's actually 5 minutes fast.
jeepers, we're getting time all over the place here, huh? An hour and 5 minutes. Okay, so, let's start with the next item on the agenda. But again, if this goes kind of late into the evening, feel free to kind of pipe up, because what we'll do is we'll open everything and just keep the public hearings open so that coming up we'll be able to continue the hearings. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so for the next item, item 564, amending zoning by adding new uses by special permit to section 3.0, table of principal and accessory uses from marijuana. Amanda, can you give us? Oh, Vicky, all right. Sorry. Vicky Caldwell. Thank you.
Hi, Vicki Caldwell, Assistant City Solicitor. I'm here today without the benefit of the planner who actually drafted the zoning ordinance, but we did submit the zoning ordinance change as part of a package from the mayor with a adoption of the taxation and the adoption of a limit. And the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, I can review it to the best of my abilities, but the zoning ordinance has, basically has to give us an overview, I mean, or give us the rules of the road for the various types of marijuana uses that are allowed under Chapter 94G of the general laws. Everybody thinks about retail marijuana when we talk about what we're doing, but there actually are 4 uses that we have to regulate in our zoning code, and that's the retail shop, the cultivation, the testing, and the processing and manufacturing. So the zoning ordinance drafted by Aaron Schaefer, the planner, with the assistance of Tom Daniel, the planner, lays out the rules of the road for those 4 uses. And the definitions that we've adopted here are consistent with the definitions that are contained in the general laws. We are a little bit out here in front compared to other communities in Massachusetts. So the planning staff has looked at laws from and ordinances from Colorado, Washington State, and communities in those places. I'm certain there's going to be a lot of comment on this tonight. The major thing, though, that is on your first of your sheet is the table of uses. And so you can see, going over for the 4 types of marijuana establishments, the first one being the retail marijuana, it would be allowed by special permit in the B2, the B4, industrial, and the BPD. Manufacturing would be allowed in the industrial and the BPD. Marijuana testing facilities in the B2 and the BPD by right, and by special permit in the industrial. And marijuana retailer would be allowed by special permit, I'm sorry, I spoke incorrectly the first time, and the first one I mentioned was actually the cultivator. So the retailer is also, though, a Board of Appeals special permit in the B2, the B4, industrial, and the BPD. As the mayor's cover letter indicated, we're trying to treat this like alcohol package store licensing and locating of package stores with a few tweaks. And obviously, that's going to be a point of discussion tonight. We understand that. And but this was the consensus. So we had some meetings with the zoning Board of Appeals folks, as well as internal staff, and this is the recommendation that we come with today. But obviously, this is new territory for all of us, and we understand there's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of interest in this. So I'm here, available for questions.
Council McCarthy, Council Turiel, Council Famico, Council Giroux.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to Ms. Caldwell. So basically, when you look at all the different types of marijuana from this table, there's only 2 areas which are allowed by right, specifically a marijuana testing facility in the B2 in the BPD. Other than that, any other type, as you see from the table, nothing's allowed in residential, nothing's allowed in the B5, nothing's allowed in the B1. But other than that, in order to do any of these other by this table, if someone's coming in, it would still need a board approval in order for it to go through.
Yes, it would have the special permit process that we have for, same as we do for other uses throughout the city. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is that for a marijuana establishment to get a license from the state, they need a letter of non-opposition or support, which is going to be a letter that comes from both the council and the mayor.
And just because the only, out of all the different, as you've broken out on the table, is marijuana testing. Can you just briefly describe for everybody what a marijuana testing facility, what the makeup of that would be? Because that's the only thing that anyone, if they were doing one, could do by right in a B2 or in a BPD.
We view that, the thinking behind allowing it by right is we allow other testing facilities, other laboratory facilities by right in those zoning districts. So we thought it would be fair to treat marijuana testing, it's testing, not production, or, it's a testing facility. And we actually already have one in the city, to my understanding. And many people don't even know that.
I have no further questions. I mean, I think the table just summarizes everything and gives everyone a nice feel. It's the first bullet. It's the first bullet on 3 of them. I think understanding of where things can go and where they potentially could go. But it's just for anyone's, the way when you read the table it kind of conforms to the way that we redid the tables in the zoning book, probably like 5 or 6 years ago. So I think it makes it very flows right through. You have to understand what's allowed where, and what if you're looking to do something and you know that you need a board approval. So I think the table makes sense.
Council Terrio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. So the testing facility that we do have, that's in the B2 now. over in that location, or is that location part of the B5?
I think it's in the B2, but I'm not 100% sure, so I have to get back to you on that. Amanda, do you know?
B5.
Council.
Okay.
B5.
It's in the B5, okay.
So, right there, we have a, we have a use there in the B5 that by this standard wouldn't be permitted, and they're already doing it. So we should probably adjust things. So I don't see very many places in the B5, which is relatively high value, where most people are going to do a use like that. But I think we should probably have that be a special permit as well, if anything, just to legitimize the existing use. I mean, I know the building, they're doing a lot of other work there too, but, it's a large building that's well suited for that use. So I think we want to make sure that what they're doing there now remains legal. And then in the same vein, we have right now, we're going to, we have a kind of a direction that we're looking at treating it more or less like package stores, adult use only, 21 and over, et cetera, et cetera. And so by that stretch, we have multiple package stores in the B5 now. So I think that B5 should be a special permit just like the other one. I'm fully on board with the R1, R2, R3 restriction and the B1 restriction. The NRCC, same thing, really. That's a fairly small area we're talking about. But, I see this as, Board of Appeals through B2 all the way through BPD. So that would include the B5 to me. Because if we adopt the, as proposed, that we adhere, that we work by the state, by the cap, the 20% cap, we're going to have, depending on how you interpret things and what we have for numbers, we're going to have at most 5 facilities within the city limits, and at the maximum. And so I don't want to have to push all of those out into the neighborhoods. I'd rather see at least one of those be downtown, and frankly, it'll probably generate more revenue for the city that way. But, I don't think that restriction is necessary, since we do have a special permit process.
If I could just address the point about the existing testing facility in the B5, it would not be illegal by this. It would be a pre-existing non-conforming use that would be allowed, and this would not have an impact on them. But that's a fair point, that it's already in the B5 and not having a problem.
I don't know what other properties, just thinking offhand, I don't know what other properties in the B5 would even be suited to that sort of use. I don't think there really are any, but I think it would be best if we legalize that. And again, it's a special permit process. I don't think Salem is going to be suddenly overrun by testing companies. So I don't see that as a major problem.
Councilor Famico, Councilor Gerard, Councilor Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. That was my first part, and was questioning whether that would be grandfathered and the regulations surrounding that. Specifically with this looking at uses, I think that what we also need to realize is, although there are medical purposes surrounding this, that with insurance costs and amount of time people need to take to get to doctor's appointments and everything else, some people aren't going to go the medical route. There's cost to see your doctor, there's taking time off of work, there's getting to and from your doctor's appointment, and sometimes that's cost, whether it's paying for childcare or even taking away from your own income, and that's someone's medication. But to tie into that, when you're looking at limiting locations, you also limit some people's access. In Salem, while we do have a commuter rail station and bus stops, not all of them are accessible to everyone. And to limit it to only certain areas far out, you're also putting some people at a disadvantage of getting to and from their sources. And if it is a medical purpose or whatever purpose, it shouldn't be just for specific people to get to and from. So while looking at the uses, I hope that we also look at accessibility. And the accessibility, especially with some folks too, they're relying on other sources to get to and from, whether it's requesting a ride a week in advance or whatnot. And limiting it to certain areas limits them for that. And also, even with just adding the B5, that also restricts people's access. Our current location in Salem for medical purposes is, I think the closest bus stop to there is about 1.5 blocks away. So to take that into mind when looking at this, and also taking into account that yes, your downtown is your core, But if the industrial areas that we're looking at, it's special permitted, look at the industrial areas in Salem. There's some along Canal Street, some off of Highland Ave, but it's really limited in this. Just to, if we're looking at a Salem of all different income levels and of all different people from all different places, to keep that in mind. And when we get into the other topics, I have just a couple things for input. Thank you, Madam Chair President. I'm not sure what to call you tonight, that's why I'm putting both in there. Thank you.
Counselor Gerard, Counselor Dibble.
Thank you, Madam President. I too agree with my colleagues that I think that the B5 should not be excluded on this. It kind of doesn't make any sense why. I think if we already have package stores in the B5, and if, as Vicki mentioned, we're treating this kind of like a package store, that why not have the same requirements? I'm just looking at the zoning map, and I find it very interesting that Salem Willows is considered B2. And
Yes, we noticed that as well, Councilor Gerard.
And so then also, because the NRCC is largely in my ward, I'm wondering how the NRCC would be treated in this, because it's not on this table.
Yeah, when Councilor Turiel mentioned that, I noticed that as well, and so that was something we're going to have to probably take care of going forward. That it's, because right now, I believe ATG is in the NRCC.
Well, actually, the NRCC is really, I think that may be the BPD, actually.
Is it BPD there?
Yeah. Yeah, that's BPD over there. So.
It's just NRCC adjacent?
Yes, it is NRCC adjacent, but
yes, so we do need to include that. That's not here.
And I know that ATG would then get first dibs, if you will.
They would, if they're interested in that, they will be the first, because they will have, by right, existing licensed medical facility will be able to go to retail. And they can apply as early, at the earliest point, and have a license probably earlier than any newcomer to the community, yeah.
Right, and so where we already have the medical facility in my ward, I would like to let the other wards have a little some, and so not just limit it to just the BPD and just leaving it over there, so. Okay. My recommendation.
Counselor Dibble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President. Through you to our fine assistant solicitor. You mentioned at the beginning of your introduction that we have to regulate this. What happens if we don't regulate this? Are we ordered by the state to regulate? Can we just simply not do anything?
If we don't do anything, we don't have any control, because the licensing piece here, unlike with liquor stores and liquor, comes from the state. They issue the licenses, we do not. So there is a provision in the general laws for local control, and it tells us the parameters of what we can do, hence the 20% of package store limit and such. So if we don't create zoning ordinance changes or or general ordinance changes, then we don't have any control.
Correct. I agree, but there's no requirement in this that we have to regulate it. Is that right?
No.
Correct. Okay. Just wanted, maybe there was a side to something that I had not seen. I'm just curious, how did we come up with the recommendation of not doing the B5 and also not doing B1? Because I received several comments from Ward 7 residents, probably 3 now, and then a couple Facebook messages. I'm not sure where those folks live, so maybe 6 messages altogether. If we eliminate the B5, we're pushing this all into the residential neighborhoods. So why was the recommendation not to have any of this in the B5?
I think there was some sensitivity to it being a new use and to take things slowly and to limit it in the downtown core, but there was a debate on this. It was not a, this is just a choice, keeping it out of the B5, but it was meant as a way to slowly get ourselves, because we haven't done this before. No one else has done this before, and so there were some concerns about protecting the B5. The B1, there was really no discussion that it was a neighborhood business area, and it was the consensus was pretty firm that that was, that was not something that was going to be recommended to put in the B1.
I like the idea of eliminating the B1, which in my mind's eye is mom and pop stores, but I did get some interesting comments back from one resident, actually two residents, on the B1, and how if we eliminate the B1, then we're really eliminating a lot of the small mom and pop local type people who are not a nationwide chain or a bigger chain who might go into a B2 or a bigger location or downtown, et cetera. So we're eliminating some of the local people who might want to start selling this marijuana in a B1, which again, I think I'm in disagreement with, but can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I can only comment that, it's hard to comment on that. All this is very hypothetical at this point, but I do think it's a hard point of entry for a mom and pop business, retail marijuana, given the degree of regulation and the requirements of the state licensing scheme. It's not an easy lift, to put it that way, as opposed to opening a bodega.
Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. Within the, speaking about the testing, within BPD, we're allowing it by right, but within industrial, we're not, and you need to get a special permit. Why not industrial? And when I look at BPD, now we're allowing we're actually pushing BPD towards residential all over the place. Blubber Hollow, the most recent one. When I believe the BPD, we shouldn't offer it as of right. We should require a permit because we're having a lot of housing in business park developments. So I'm curious, why not industrial? I think they're backwards.
I think it was more in line of treating a marijuana testing facility similar to laboratories, and so we carried that over through. That's my recollection of
across the board, we're saying no to residential conservation, R1, R2, R3. Residential, no way. It's not allowed. But BPD has a substantial amount of residential, and we're going to allow it by right. I think it needs to be at least protected.
It's only testing by right, all the rest are not support approval.
Yes.
It's only testing, not selling, not...
That's correct. The testing is what I'm speaking to. I think that should be similar to industrial as being requiring a permit rather than just by right.
So you're...
Protect the houses, the residences that we're creating in business areas.
All right.
The last question I had was on the NRCC, if I may. Do you have a recommendation for a starting point of what, so similar to these others, the no, yes, or by permit for discussion for tonight?
I would be reluctant to do that without talking to Tom Daniel and Aaron Schaefer, who were involved in the drafting of this. It's really, although I am on my zoning board in my local community, I am not a zoning expert by any means. So.
Then without that recommendation, I'd like to see this continued so we have a recommendation as to what, not to continue this just for that one reason. I'm sure there's going to be other reasons, but I'd like to get a recommendation for the complete 100% of the city rather than moving forward with 90% of it. Thank you.
Councilor Kamiko?
Thank you, Madam Chair President. No matter where it goes, I would kind of urge councilors and the planning board, and actually residents as well, to push for better enforcement of ordinances that help support our zoning, specifically those regarding signage and things of the like, because no matter where these things go, if all of a sudden you have neon lights in the window and large signs, it needs to be equal enforcement. You can't choose some shops over others to start enforcing on. So no matter where this goes, if you could urge some better enforcement of that, I'd be thankful as a resident of the city. Thank you.
Any other councilors?
That's a good question.
Councilor, Councilor Sargent, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Once you get outside of the B5 district, has there been any consideration given to distance from residential property, as we do with liquor licenses many times, where you might be on the the border of R1, B2, and so you could technically be next door to a one-family home and still be in the B2, and some things take into consideration, distance from residential property, school, funeral home, church, that kind of thing. Is there any consideration been given to that?
There's a provision in the draft regarding that, and there's also a provision in the law itself that tells us what it has to be, and it requires that it be located at the time the license application is received by the commission, not within 500 feet of a pre-existing public or private school providing education in kindergarten or any grades 1 through 12, unless the city or town adopts an ordinance or bylaw that reduces the distance requirement. So in our draft, we do have provisions in the special permit process, I believe, that talks about an expansion of this and notification of abutters beyond that. Trying to find where it is. It's in here. But that is a concern, and that will be a concern as part of the special permit process, and abutters will be notified, particularly all the abutters of concern.
Could we put in a provision, say if the intent isn't to have it near RC, R1, R2, and R3, could we put in a provision that it not be so many feet from a residential property so that we didn't run into one of those border disputes? So would we be on legal ground if we did that?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that, but that's, I'll take that note down, Councilor Sargent.
Thank you. All set. Thank you, Madam President.
Anybody from the planning board? No? Okay. No.
Yeah.
No one.
Quickly, I mean, I think, I agree with a number of the points that the councilors made. Personally, I've been trying to figure out in my own mind a reason to treat this different than a package store license, and I can't come up with anything. So personally, I agree with what a lot of the councilors said about B5, but I also think this, that specifically the retailer use should be allowed in B1. I have not been to Colorado since this became legal in Colorado, but I've been to Oregon frequently, and there are a few years past where we are on legalization, and actually a lot of the places where you see retail establishments, they do look like mom and pop stores, and they're on what sort of are like neighborhood residential corridors, and they're pretty subtle and pretty, I don't know if you call them a mom and pop, but these are small operations at a neighborhood scale. Also, I agree with Councilor Dibble about the NRCC. I think we do need to get some guidance about what that would look like in the NRCC, especially because it is this interstitial zone between sort of an industrial area that's being partially developed between residential neighborhoods. And there are some areas, especially like thinking like on the south side of Mason Street, that might actually be attractive to some of the, not necessarily the retail uses, but some of the more manufacturing and cultivation type uses. So it's sort of a new industrial use that could potentially come in, and whether we want to see it there or not, we can reserve judgment on for now, but it would be I think, critical to see the full picture in terms of where these things could be cited. But again, I think access is important, and I think that, we have pretty well thought out regulations and intensive regulations about package stores, and in a place where you can allow package stores like B1 or B5, I don't see any reason to treat a retail establishment for marijuana any differently, unless someone come up with a good argument why. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, from the public? Would anyone like to speak in favor of this? Brendan? Thank you, Vicki.
Brendan Murphy, 19 East Collins Street. So, just to kind of cut through a lot of the red tape, if you will, my understanding was that a lot of the reason why B5 was not included was to keep it out of the downtown, which I do not think is a particularly good idea for many reasons, but I'll be brief. The first one, Councilor Fumiko has brought up, our mass transit system is focused in the downtown. With, I believe, off the top of my head, Linfield, Danvers, and now Peabody are looking for full and complete bans, that's going to draw people from outside of Salem into Salem to purchase. It's going to happen, and our infrastructure is set up in the downtown to be able to handle that load. Parking is going to be an issue, but again, that's where our garages are. And I would really hate to see that spilling out more into the neighborhoods. And along the lines of the B1 mom and pop shops, I'm okay with that to an effect, so long as there is sort of a rigid special permit process that would literally take it situation by situation. And I realize we like to be consistent, but when you're talking about different neighborhoods, there's obviously different things at play. But that's I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Excuse me. You here like to speak in favor? How about on this side of the room? Anybody in favor? Yes.
Richard Rivera, 17 Orchard Street, Ward 6. I'm in agreement with a lot of the counselors here. Eliminating B5 is a mistake. I happened to walk all of the areas that were zoned for retail space, and I found one building in Ward 6 that was for sale for $800,000. Other than that, I couldn't find any other open space to possibly open a retail spot, unless you want to go to Shetland Park, and that's where businesses go to die. And there are 2 schools there. So you couldn't even open a retail park there, a retail store there as well. So opening B5 is going to help Salem. This is where the people come. We're very lucky to have a season in Salem. We have October. You know, we have tourists coming. I spent 6 days in Colorado, and they started off, a lot of dispensaries started off as medical. But tourism grew, and quickly these medical dispensaries left that part of the business and were able to open rec to cater to tourists. And in Salem, we have that season already with us. So by pushing us outside of B5 and forcing these tourists to go up Highland Avenue or to other areas, we're not going to get the full 3% that we're entitled to. Would you rather have 3% of $100 or 3% of $1,000? That's the way I see it. And lastly, when looking for a retail partner in the B5, you need to decide, well, what does this dispensary look like? You know, does it have Salem in mind? There is language in the law that states that 1, medical dispensaries do get first crack, but 2, you can have someone who demonstrates experience in business practices that promotes economic empowerment in communities impacted by high rates of arrest or incarceration for controlled substances. So medical dispensaries, yes, they get first crack, but there is some language in there that allows business people like myself, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room, to enter this industry. Full disclosure, I'm researching it. It is not a mom and pop business. I mean, you're looking at about 1.5 million to do it correctly. So this is a business, first and foremost, and that's how we need to think. How to operate this business and make the most, for the town of Salem, the most that 3%. Everyone looks at the tax dollars, but how do we get to the tax dollars? So let's focus it on a business, a responsible industry. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor? No? Okay, we'll start back around here. Anybody wish to speak opposed? Michael and then Meg.
Thank you, President Milo, and all councilors and planning board members for hearing my thoughts on tonight's marijuana ordinance. I'm here to oppose the ordinance in its current form. I'm sorry, I'm Michael Atulip, 190 Bridge Street in Salem. I'm here to oppose this ordinance in its current form, but I'm not opposed to marijuana. I am actually one of the 25 appointed members of the Cannabis Advisory Board to the Cannabis Control Commission, and we are currently very busy working on recommendations and regulatory draft language for the commission. Adult use regulations will not actually be finalized until March of 2018, and I would like to suggest that the City of Salem waits before passing any marijuana ordinances before the law is finalized in regulations. The new marijuana law makes a stand to try and help women, minorities, and veterans, but Salem's proposal would do the opposite. And the proposal currently lacks, I think, an understanding of the full adult use statute and makes several basic clerical errors that I would like to point out to further back up my stance that this proposal is in essence half-baked in its current form and should be changed because it does not consider all stakeholders in Salem. First of all, the marijuana statute is actually spread across two chapters, Chapter 94G and Chapter 55, an act to ensure safe access to marijuana signed by Governor Baker this summer. The Salem proposal currently only refers to Chapter 94G and does not refer to sections that were changed in Chapter 94G by Chapter 55. Section 610.2 around applicability refers to Chapter 94G, but the section it refers to is now governed by Section 20 of Chapter 55. For that matter, the entirety of Sections 1's definitions of Chapter 94G were replaced by Section 20 of Chapter 55. And under Section 10.3 of the proposed Salem ordinance, it refers to definitions changed in Section 20 of Chapter 55. Other licenses, such as craft marijuana cooperatives, which were only under Chapter 55 and not in Chapter 94G, are missing from this proposal. And there's a variety of other small licenses that will be possible. Mom and pop shops will be possible under these proposed, under 94G, because it specifically tasks the commission with not only helping minorities and small businesses get into this space, but also to, kind of encourage more participation from all communities that were kind of oppressed from the drug war. That being said, on that note, Section 3, subsection A, dealing with municipal governance, referred to in Section 610.5 governing municipal requirements, is now handled mostly under Chapter 55, Sections 23, 24, and 25. Section 3 of Section 610.6 regarding general provisions requires all marijuana establishments to be indoors, which is counterintuitive with environmental standards and protections. On one hand, we want cultivators to generate 50% of their electricity from on-site facilities, but on the other hand, we won't allow them to use greenhouses or outdoor cultivation currently allowed under the adult use statute. It sends mixed messages and is what I would consider unreasonably impracticable and could lead to lawsuits against the city. Retail marijuana establishment items referred to in Section 10 of Section 610.6 are not properly defined in the ordinance and could lead to unreasonably impracticable expectations on applicants. On-site consumption facilities are allowed under the adult use statute, and banning them in Section 12 of Section 6.10.6 is dangerous for public safety and will encourage travelers to Salem to purchase more than they need, littering our streets with marijuana packaging. Some consumers do not want to consume at home around their children and deserve a choice to use it at an on-site consumption marijuana retailer. Section 10.11 and Section 10.12 regarding testing in retail establishments both refer to Chapter 94G, Section 15, which has since been replaced by Chapter 55, Section 41. It is obvious to me that this proposal was done without any input from stakeholders like myself who have an intimate relation with these laws. Our Cannabis Advisory Board is currently working with the Commission on developing regulations. The entire map, as it's currently proposed, is blocked out by this proposal. Not having cannabis establishments, especially on-site consumption retailers in tourist areas like B1 and B5, we are begging for a public health and safety disaster. Our children will be exposed to marijuana smoke and pollution, and parents will have no choice but to bring marijuana home with them. Let's take a step back and really think about where these businesses should be located, setting up and developing a community mitigation plan that includes the development of a municipal cannabis advisory board made up of a variety of stakeholders, from local residents to business owners, cannabis operators, elected officials, representatives from police, fire, health, youth prevention, should all be involved in the development of a municipal committee that really takes marijuana seriously and creates thoughtful regulations. Please take the appropriate measures needed to ensure that this ordinance does not damage our credibility as a city and does not push out disadvantaged groups like minorities, women, and veterans. Let's change the clerical errors and try and include as many of the disadvantaged groups as possible in the process. And I will note that under the new adult use law, non-vertical integration is possible, so people will not have to fork out $1 million+ to create a cultivation center, which is generally where all the money goes. So having a small mom and pop retail center that purchases wholesale cannabis from cannabis cultivation centers and co-ops is possible under this law. So we shouldn't really regulate this entirely like package stores, because under the new law, there are a lot of special license types. One of the proposals that I have currently going through the subcommittees is a 51% requirement in order for a business to apply to become an on-site consumption retailer. This would essentially allow a business that, let's say, 65% of their sales were going to be marijuana related to apply. And this could happen for yoga studios, for art galleries that want to incorporate cannabis into the art they make. Even I've heard nail salons that want to incorporate cannabis into the manicures that they give people. So when we're talking about a marijuana establishment, we shouldn't think of a package store anymore. Package stores are old-fashioned. It's, in essence, what Colorado and Washington and all these other states did. But those states did not incorporate the need to include minorities, veterans, women, small entrepreneurs. It also didn't include on-site consumption and all these other small licenses that are going to be possible. So when developing this ordinance, we really do need to wait, I think, to some extent, before the regulations are finalized in March. We're kind of taking a bit of a risk. Assuming that we're going to have a package store future is dangerous, because we could push out some of these small mom and pop businesses that want to incorporate a little marijuana in their business. Maybe they don't want to sell a large quantity to the public, but they want to incorporate some marijuana in the yoga that they do and some other aspect to their business. So I want to make sure that when we say we're going to limit to 5 marijuana establishments, we realize that we could potentially be limiting this to manufacturers, retailers, package store-like facilities, and not really incorporating the wide range of applicants I think we're going to see starting in April of next year. So with that, I will complete, and I thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you. Meg?
Meg Toohey, 122 Federal Street. Michael, you are a very hard act to follow, and I thank you very much. I learned a lot. I think I came here to first to ask, we're making an assumption that we want to be a city that sells marijuana. I might want to be a city that cultivates marijuana, tests marijuana, but we haven't even asked the question, no one's asked the question of, do we want to be a city that sells marijuana? There are cities that don't want to. So I want to raise that question. I certainly support what Michael is talking about. I feel that this is a rush to be the first city in the state to do this, but without really understanding the consequences. And I'm certainly concerned that if we do it very well. We do it very well for the city, And we do it very well for the businesses, since if we do it, we're really making a decision both about what we want Salem to look like and what we want our taxes to be, because we're looking at it for income. I have great concerns because I live right adjacent to the NRCC, that the NRCC is not included in this. And I note, by the way, that in the things for the public hearings that have been closed, that the NRCC is also not included in those tables either. So I don't know how you handle that, since I always have a concern about closing hearings. I share the desire to see us really put this in the downtown and really think strategically about where we want what kind of uses. And I will say, in the NRCC, we could be really happy about testing and cultivation. It was always a dream of ours that we would find new industrial uses for that area, that it would be a business and job generator for the city, not just housing. So I think I'm not speaking for all my neighbors, but I speak for myself there. So I think there's a lot more work to do here, and I'm very concerned about one thing. I'm hearing you all say tonight that you want to continue this hearing. But once this hearing is closed, there are 90 days in which you have to vote on this. And given Michael's suggestions tonight, I think you may wish to consider whether the city might want to withdraw and come back with this particular ordinance at a later date. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody on this side of the room wish to? Nicole?
Good evening, Nicole Snow, 190 Bridge Street. I am the president of the Massachusetts Patient Advocacy Alliance, which represents patients that use medical marijuana. I am also a member of the 25-member advisory board to the Cannabis Control Commission. I was assigned to 2 subcommittees, and one which is market participation. And that particular subcommittee is near and dear to my heart, and it should be near and dear to Salem's heart, because this is the mission that question 4 meant to do, was to bridge the gap between the illicit market and the regulated market. And right now we have people using marijuana for all sorts of purposes, for business purposes, how Michael said that they incorporate it in art, they use it during yoga practice, and they use marijuana out, in picnics and camping sites. So we want to think about special day permits during weddings and different things like that. And I listened to a lot of public comment in Boston and in Springfield, Massachusetts, about small businesses and what they do and how they manage and how they wish they could become a part of this industry. And the B1 area where it would be affordable for mom and pops and small businesses, this is where we're thinking of putting those businesses. This is where people can afford to start a new business and start a new business plan. So I hope that everybody takes that into consideration. Also, one other thing is the laboratory that does test medical marijuana. Hopefully, they will be able to test for adult use marijuana. That would be helpful, because then the prices will come down for laboratory testing, and that will actually help patients in the long run. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak opposed? Anyone have any questions, the council or the planning board? Councilor Duell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to see the restriction of K-12 be expanded to include colleges and universities, whereas Salem State University's, their North Campus, Central Campus, and South Campus, and all their dormitories on those 3 properties are within Ward 7, and with the university not allowing marijuana on their property because they're subject to the federal laws, And it's foolish to think that these students will not go and buy and consume, but if the university's not allowing it, it will push that off the campus. And all the way around the campus is residential everywhere, with a few small businesses. So I'd like to see the K-12 be expanded to colleges and universities. Through you, Madam Chair, if we can have Michael's package, if you'd be willing to share that with us and distribute it to the planning board and to the city council. You rattle off chapter and verse way too fast, and I started following you at first, and I gave up. So thank you. It's a wealth of information. And we need to have our solicitor take a look at that to see what can and should be included into this document if it goes forward at this time. And through you, Madam Chair, to our assistant solicitor, Vicky, if we just explain a couple of things. If the state regulations are going to be enacted in March of 2018, or maybe before, I'm not sure, should we wait until then so we have more information? But if we do, what sort of timetable will we have after that point to make sure that Salem is protected with whatever rules and regulations we want to have in place? Because if a business comes in right away without us creating any type of rules and any type of zoning, they're here. Might be someplace where we don't want them. So the question is, in March 2018, the state comes up with the rules. Should we wait till then? Can we wait till then? Will we have time after that, by the state rules, to create our own ordinance?
Lots of questions.
As the city decided not to have a moratorium, we do have people sort of beating down our doors right now. And so part of it was to try and set the rules of the road, knowing that there would be regulations and that this would have to be tweaked down the road. To the point of, I forgot your last name. Latula. The definitions, our definitions are, even given the changes of Chapter 55, or the definitions for purposes of zoning are good, but I'd be happy to take Michael's suggestions, but I just wanted to assure you that those were fine, more or less, but we could add to them certainly with some of the new things that are there in Chapter 55 with respect to underserved communities and whatnot, if that is relevant to our zoning ordinance. I have to take a look at that. That was not something that we discussed. But I do think that we do need to do something because we need to set the ground rules for businesses that want to come in. I want to do it carefully. I think everyone here wants to do it carefully. That's why the original suggestion was not in the B5, because thinking about things like Halloween and just wanting to take it slow. But hearing the suggestions here, I'm hearing a lot of desire for the B5, maybe even for the B1, but that's something I'll relay back to Dominic, the mayor, and the planning staff, and we can discuss that going forward. I think there's good arguments to be made for all of that. It is a brave new world, and so we are going forward without all of the knowledge that we could have down the road, but I don't know that we have that choice at this point. Particularly with not so much with the zoning, but with the limitations that we want to have, if you want to engage in limiting the number, or the taxation piece, just so when businesses want to come in here, they're going to want to know what the financial piece is for them, and the taxation is a part of that, as well as any kind of agreements that we enter into with them in terms of host agreements and whatnot.
Council Terrio, Council Famico, was that a follow-up question? Do you have a
Yes.
follow-up? Sorry, go ahead.
Again, just to clarify, in March 2018, the state regs come about. Can we, if we waited until then, would we have time to create our, or is there a window of time that the state's allowing? You know, next 3 months, 90 days, 6 months? Or would the doors be open?
July 1.
July 1 is the date.
July 1, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah, and I want to say that the licensing doesn't actually start in March. It actually starts for the medical applicants in April, and then everyone after that would probably be at some later date, maybe as late as July or June before licensing would start.
So ATG could get a retail license if they desired in April, and then everybody else would start July 1 process.
Or whenever they start those applications, and we have to see the licenses available, and then obviously those applications for each one of those licenses, so.
Through you, Madam Chair, to our Assistant Solicitor, to follow up on Meg's question earlier, what are we allowed to do here in Salem, whereas we voted in favor of being a marijuana-type community, selling it, et cetera, and other towns voted no to do this, but now they're required to do as well, but there's different rules. Salem has one set of, what are Salem's rules that we need to follow?
We are creating them right now.
But other towns have an option to do something different.
No, other towns, you can put a ballot question on, seeking a total ban, you could do that.
We cannot here.
You can.
We can.
You just, given the vote of the community, I believe the feeling of the body was, or the feeling of the city was, that it was not something that the city was interested, given the vote in favor of retail marijuana in the city, whereas some other cities and towns, and they've changed the rules about who can do what when in terms of banning, but I think here we never even went down that road because the vote was clear that people in Salem wanted marijuana.
I want to say in Chapter 55, the legislature clarified things again, so that towns that voted against it could
do it by ordinance.
They could ban it by ordinance, and then if you had passed in favor, you'd actually have to go to the ballot before you could ban it.
The original rule was everybody had to go to the ballot, but now if you're a town that went the other way, you could, the council or the town meeting members could do it, or Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Counselor Terrio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just through you, so just to be kind of clear on things right now, for almost the last year, the possession and use of marijuana has been legal in the Commonwealth despite the federal status of it. So we were the first to to allow a medical marijuana establishment to open. I think that's been by all means successful, and it's provided a good example to the rest of the state as others have joined it. So I think in that sense, we were the first, and it worked out well for us. The people are getting what they want. The money to the city is a good thing. There aren't any problems. All has been well so far. In this case, we're talking about something that's already legal for possession and use by individuals. What we need to do here is regulate the sales. The people who are using this legally are right now still purchasing it unless they happen to be growing it in their own home to the limit established by the law. I think six plants per person.
12 per household.
12 per household, 6 per person. So unless somebody has a little forest of marijuana plants in their home, they're getting it from somebody. And so what we need to have is parameters. We need to do something with these parameters in order to drive that from being an underground activity into something that we are regulating, we are taxing, and we have some control over, and our police and our licensing have some oversight over. I think there's no downside to that from that sense. When this first, when we first entered into, as we put it, this brave new world, I did a bunch of research. I asked friends. Put the question out in general, said, because I don't have any idea what distribution is like in the or what prices are like. I don't even know how much you get anymore. My college days are long behind me, but so I had a couple of friends who were trying to explain to me about what they expect to do, and this was actually while they were passing a bowl pass to each other in front of me, and but seriously, one of my friends, I asked, I said, well, how do you expect to be handling this? What do you expect to be doing? And he said, I got a guy. And I wonder how this is going to work in conjunction with that, and how many people are going to have their guy put out of business by the legal establishments, which, I don't have any particular objection to that, but this is the kind of thing we have to take care of, and by being fairly flexible in the regards of how we deal with this. I mean, at this point, I am completely in favor of the cap, especially while marijuana still has this kind of indeterminate status where it's been legalized by a large number of states, representing a significant portion of our population, but it still remains a Schedule I drug at a federal level. So, right now there's sort of a gentleman's agreement between the DEA and and the states that they're not really dealing with that. But it's something that until Congress gets that together, we still have some concerns with. So I'm fine with starting slowly. I'm fine with taking this, being careful about it. I do think we should be fairly flexible in the areas that are allowed to do this. As we said, I definitely favor allowing sale in the B5. Things like on-site consumption facilities and marijuana yoga and whatever have you, is maybe that's something that happens as this world moves forward. But I don't think that's what we need to be addressing in the near term, at least.
It was my understanding, and Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the on-site consumption is going to be subject to a ballot question.
It's not just going to be subject to a ballot question, so a city could feasibly, if they want to zone or allow.
Oh, we could allow it, yes,
Yes,
but we could be forced to allow it if there's a ballot
Let's say
question.
the city bans an on-site consumption, there could feasibly be a person in the city who organizes a ballot question and
Yeah.
gets it on, and then it will be in that location by right vote of the people, outside of any purview of this council or planning board.
So the ballot question, the first available election that it could be on is in November 2018,
So
if a petition was raised.
So as a follow-up question to that, I'd say, so if we are adopting the cap, as is currently before our Ordinances, License, Legal Affairs Committee, if we adopt the cap of establishments, would said ballot question be override, or in addition to that, or?
No, the ballot question would be just about on-site consumption.
Yeah, so.
Not additional
Point
numbers.
is, if those licenses are issued, if we have wound up issuing those licenses before such time as there's anybody seeking to do the on-site consumption, the ballot question at that point would be moot, would it not, or?
Sorry, say that again?
Well, if we've given out however many licenses, and this is the one thing
yeah.
I'm not clear on, is whether it's 4 or 5,
Yeah.
because of ATG status, partly it's grandfathered. I don't know if that would count towards our total or be in addition.
Part of it is because the number of licensed
Yeah.
package stores, 20%, I believe, is 4.2.
Yeah, and.
So then so you could argue that it would be 5.
Yeah, and
in
we've
the
issued
max.
a home rule since then, which.
Yeah, so
probably-
it's a moving target in Salem, so.
So, by that, so let's say for argument's sake that it's 5 licenses, and we've issued, ATG has taken one, and
Yeah.
we've issued
There'd
4
be
others
4
in other
additional,
areas
yeah.
of the city. If we've already done all that, and then somebody proposes to establish a facility for on-site consumption, there's no licenses to be had regardless of.
Yeah,
the
it'd have to
ballot,
be
but
at one of
that's
the
my-
existing.
So it'd have to be one of those existing licenses.
That's my interpretation, but of course, there'll be regulations.
I
and-
think,
Yeah.
like, the people can vote and usurp the power of the
Exactly.
council if they want. So you can limit it to 5, but if people want on-site facilities and one of the 5 establishments is not an on-site facility, I'm pretty sure you can guarantee there's gonna be a ballot about it, so.
Okay.
If I could just also add, the cap and the taxation are separate pieces before the council, not before the joint planning board, not as part of this hearing, and that
Yeah.
need to be acted on
So
separately
I
from
think
this.
those are in OLA right now.
Although the zoning ordinance does reference the cap, but it's a cap that's, pending a passage if the council so decides to go in that direction.
Council Famiko.
Thank you. And thanks, Michael, for providing all that. First thing for the assistant solicitor. Could you confirm the timeline of this for me? So when we got this, we had to hold this public hearing within 65 days. Then if it gets sent out, the planning board, they have 21 days, and then if it gets referred back, we have 90 days to take action. So at this,
I have a handy cheat sheet.
so at this
Council,
point,
can
we're
make
already,
up on that whole issue.
okay, so within that, we're already past March with setting out.
If you max out all the days.
If you max out all the days, yeah. But see, you can hold the, the hearing can be held open, and then the hearing, if you don't close the public hearing,
You're extending your time.
you're extending the time in that way.
Thank you. And since the ordinance itself has been discussed, just like to mention for section 6.10.6, and it's mentioned a couple places, the security plans and the operation and management plans. I think that definitely needs some work, because security plans, it says to be reviewed primarily just by the police department and Department of Planning. However, if you were to actually call 911 for something, sometimes it's the fire department that shows up first. And for that part, and then also, and I don't know, this would be a legal question, to ensure that the part that's even submitted to the building department, I don't know why it's just going to building, because it mentions things that reference the Board of Health, the fire department, and the licensing board. But with all of these, it seems as though that needs to be something that's locked down and not subject to public records law or the Freedom of Information Act. Because when these parts are getting submitted different places, there's some high-level security information involved with that.
There are exceptions under the public records law for such security plans. And if you go down past the security plan, the fire department is included in the emergency response plan.
Right, the emergency response, but not the reviewing of the initial plan for that. And I know there are parts that do preclude that, but just to make sure we tighten that up, because if someone comes in and someone's not necessarily sure and it's part of the record, you could be giving somebody access to a lot of money and other aspects.
The chief of police was in on the drafting of the ordinance and the.
I understand that, but with some of this, it's also getting filed with the planning department and also with the building department, with a lot of these details.
They should.
I agree it should, but I don't think it should be open, even within people within a department. I don't think that everyone within a department should even be privy to some of that information.
Thanks, I wrote that down.
Thank you. Councilor Dibble expressed his desire to keep the public hearing open. Councilor McCarthy.
Yes, and I totally agree with the concept of keeping it public, but I just want to remind everyone, it has to be to a date certain. You just can't keep kicking this down the road and saying, at some point, we have to deal with this. So I understand there's more information needs to be got, and I appreciate that, but it has to be to a date certain. So it has to be at a mutually agreeable date for this body and the planning board, and it's not like something you can just say, oh, it's going to be to satisfy everyone's, oh, do it 3 months from now, and then we'll just cover ourselves. No, it's like, you got to come up with a date now, and because that's referred to a date certain. I just want to remind everyone, I know the city clerk's shaking her head, but that's correct. Because you just can't say, oh, we're going to have a meeting whenever, we'll figure it out after the holidays. No. We got to figure it out now, pick the date, and then move it.
We have a date certain.
Madam Clerk, do you want to comment on that? No?
No, she's nodding her head, says yes.
Yes.
A date certain would be necessary,
Yes, correct.
And we've actually had that discussion, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Of when the date certain might be. Councilor Dibble? Would you like to make a motion to keep this open?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to keep the public hearing open and to continue it to a January 17th date.
I believe we've got a date sooner than that. November,
25th.
Well, November 25th is actually Saturday.
no, I think it was the 27th, right? Was it the 27th? Is that what everybody understood? Yeah. Okay, all right,
What day of
so.
the week is that?
Monday.
Okay.
My motion was to January 17th is a Wednesday.
Okay, and that's the motion you want to make?
Yes.
Okay. All right, on Councilor Dibble's motion to continue this to January 17th? Is there a second?
I'll second.
What was that?
Second.
Okay, all right. All those in,
Hold on.
wait, okay.
This is, Madam President, if I may,
ahead.
this is why I brought it up earlier.
Yeah.
It has to be mutually agreeable to this body and to the planning board. We don't, on a continued public hearing, we don't operate independently from them.
Right.
So it has to be, if they don't agree, then this is why this was done in advance. So we came up with a
Right.
date prior. So I respect the Ward 7 council, but unless he's had a conversation with the entire planning board, then he has to come up with a date that works for them.
And what do members of the planning board have to say about January? I see a lot of this. Potentially have a quorum?
Yeah.
So what is it?
At this time, it appears we have a quorum.
What was that?
Yeah, we'll say that we have a quorum.
The thinnest of quorums, yes.
Yeah, we have a
Okay,
quorum.
all right. So we have a quorum for the planning board. Counselors, are you going to be available?
Madam Chair President, we have a change in council coming up, so we don't even know if we'd have a quorum.
Right.
I don't believe.
Exactly, yeah. So I would say that Counselor Dibble's motion isn't going to work for the two bodies. Would you like to change your motion?
No, I think it should be after the first.
We have 7 here.
Six next year.
And we have 2 over there.
It should be after the first, but we're not sure what counselors are going to be here. Well, we know what counselors are going to be here. We're not sure of their availability. I'm going to tell you what, I'm not going to allow that motion because it doesn't work. So rather than even getting into it, I'll entertain another motion for another date certain. Counselor Terrio?
Thank you, Madam President. I'll move that this be recessed and continued to, pretty much as specified in here, to a date certain that would be Monday, November 27th.
Okay, is there a second on that? Second. Okay, and I think the planning board is all agreeable on that. Okay. On Counselor Terrio's motion that this remain open and be continued to November 27th?
As a date certain.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter carries. We've had some discussion about the next two items as well. We've kind of conflated everything. We'll open the next two.
Should we just go straight to continue those, or?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We'll open them and we'll continue them both, okay?
Okay, I'll make the motions. Go ahead.
Okay,
Continue to January 17th.
all right.
So,
So, on amending zoning by adding new definitions to section 10.
Move that the matter be referred to the November.
could be held open and
If
continued.
everyone could hold their conversation until they get out of the chamber, please. We've still got the meeting going. Thank you. Counselor McCarthy.
Move that the matter be, remain open and the public hearing not be closed on that matter and referred to the November 27th
Okay.
date.
And is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter carries. And the final item is amending zoning by adding new section 6.10. Counselor McCarthy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the matter remain, the hearing remain open and that it be referred to a date certain of November 27th.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter carries.
Madam President, just one quick clarification.
Sure.
So it'll be at 6:30 as well?
I think I don't know if you've actually scheduled it, but does 6:30 work for everybody? Or would you prefer to start earlier? No? Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right, so we'll say 6:30. Counselor Terrio?
Move we adjourn?
Counselor Terrio moves for adjournment. All those in favor?
Debatable.
Okay.
Richard?